superstar Dustin Martin, and what it could mean for the Tigers and their flag aspirations, plus the recruit of the year so far and this week's NAB Rising Star nomination. I'm Sarah Ollie, as always, joined by Cal Toomey and Riley Beveridge. Riles,
yes.
We've got a body of evidence now. We're 8 rounds in when we're starting to see some trends emerge and starting to see the 8 take shape.
Yeah, we are. I mean, it's pretty good. I think it's that point in the season where games have real significance. Not that they don't early in the season, but I think if you lose a top of the table clash in round 2, it's a bit different than if you lose a top 4 clash in round 9 and 10 when you know just how good the sides are. So, yeah, looking forward to what's still to come. I've enjoyed the first 8 weeks and looking forward to what's still to come.
And plenty more still to come, Cal. Welcome to you.
Hey, Sarah. Hey, Riles. Yeah.
Hi, Cal.
Hi, Riley. Sarah. Riley. Good show to come. Looking forward to finding out the Rising Star winner.
Yeah.
We're just speaking backstage in the green room about how good a crop the Rising Star is in 2022. So looking forward to the latest edition in about 14 minutes.
Cal, let's begin with Essendon. That final quarter we saw against Hawthorn, 8 goals to 1, a really unlikely but compelling victory at Marvel Stadium. Is that the real Essendon, or is the real Essendon the other one that showed up for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I mean, the Jekyll and Hyde of Essendon has been the story for so long. I actually asked Ben Rutten about this last week. You know, inconsistency has plagued that football club for not just the time that he's been there, but for so long. And I think any follower of Essendon would recognise that. And to the point where everyone was looking for an emotional response sooner or later, and it eventually happened. Now, the discussion around the Bombers' first 7 weeks of the season was that they'd been underachieving. So clearly I don't think they were ever as bad as a bottom 3 team. And that's still around where they fit, but on the ladder. But I spoke to Mason Redmond after the game, and even he said that players had been letting down Rutten, Josh Marnie, the footy department. So he took some ownership of that. There's clearly been a breakdown between what was being put to the players and what was being executed. Now, whatever reason or motive behind that, we'll never really know. But they did play a more aggressive brand of footy with the flair and everything that Rutten last week was calling for. It is different to what he's wanted them to play like, though. Aggression and flair and this forward movement game has been a little bit different to what has been building there. And that's a confusing element for when you're trying to assess what Essendon actually is trying to do. They were better on the weekend, even until the last quarter. They weren't playing a very good team. And we'll talk about the Hawks shortly, but the Hawks, let them into the game at certain points and probably should have put them away at different points as well. But look, Essendon, when you look at the list, is better than a 2-6 team by some way. So I think that's probably enough to suggest that the first period of the season for them was really disappointing. And that's a frustration as well, I'd say, when you look at them and say, well, you lost 5 players on game day or the day before via illness, and other players were ill as well. Redmond was one of them. It was, as he said, crook as a dog. He only just got up for the game. Other guys had missed training throughout the week. And you're still able to slam on an 8-goal last quarter. Peter Wright, by the way, has been phenomenal. Like, I don't think we're probably giving enough credit to how good a year he's having.
Yeah.
Probably because of how bad Essendon has been until the weekend, but he's playing some great footy. Nick Martin's a terrific player. And Ben Hobbs was really good in the midfield. And to me, this really should just signal the change of Andy McGrath's role. And I'm sick of seeing Andy play a quarter here, a quarter there, a bit of time here, a bit of time there. Move him to permanently at half back and let him do his thing and be an absolute leader out there. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the Bombers go this week.
You use the word there, but they're such an emotional team.
Oh.
Like, it just doesn't... They feed off it, and it didn't really surprise me that they won because the heat had been on them all week. They had 5 players withdrawn 90 minutes before the bounce. That was just the backs against the wall performance that they sort of craved over the last... not just the last 8 weeks, but the last sort of 18 months and the last sort of 10 years. You go back to everything that happened to them in the early 2010s and they were getting up and winning games they shouldn't have won during that period as well. I just think that whether or not that bodes well for them long term, I don't think you should have to have an emotional response for you to get a response. And I don't think that systematically that is long-term sustainable solution either, and that's probably why they haven't won a final since whenever it is. In terms of whether or not the final quarter is what the real Essendon is, I'm not sure it really is, because they still played 3 quarters of pretty ordinary footy, and whether or not the outs and mitigate for that is another question altogether. But Hawthorn don't win inside 50s. We've spoken about this a lot of times in the show. They don't win inside 50s much, and I don't think they have all season. I can't remember a time where they have, and they were +3 in inside 50s to 3/4 time, and they got smashed in that area in the last term. So even Saturday night in itself is a small sample size.
So the final quarter for me was a bit of a return to the DNA that perhaps we saw at the back end of last year. And I've got a note here as well, Riley, saying that it is curious that with their backs against the wall, with the injuries to Stringer and Cox, and then the 5 outs, 3 illness, that they find the resolve to play like they did in the last quarter. That is an emotional response.
Yeah.
Indeed. Look, one quarter does not make a season, but can this one quarter perhaps spark the Bombers? Because it's familiar territory, Cal. They were 2-6 last year.
Well, this week's a big game. They play Sydney, who they match up well against.
Yep.
The last 5 games have been 10 points or less. A couple wins,
Great
a couple
games.
losses, and great games, and always some curious umpiring decisions.
People climbing poles.
There was a controversy with those games, the Essendon and Sydney games, but yeah, and then they've got a tough couple of weeks. I don't think they'll be making the finals this year, and they're pretty lucky to scrape in last year, really, given the way the season panned out. But look, the last few weeks can make footy clubs too, so maybe that was the end of the experience for a couple of weeks of fierce criticism. We will wait and see. As for the Hawks, Riley, has the bubble burst for Hawthorn and Adelaide, because it's been a couple of dirty weeks for those sides?
It has been, and I think this has gone under the radar a touch, and people are going to think I'm being very harsh on Hawthorn, but it hasn't just been a couple of dirty weeks, but they've lost 5 of their last 6 now. So they've started the season really well, but they've dropped off a lot. I think they've shown a lot, perhaps. Even though Adelaide's record's been better in the last 6 weeks, I think they might have even shown a bit more than Adelaide. They're both in similar positions in their rebuild, both with coaches doing their first couple of years of their career as well. So I think there's still some things for them to feed off, but I think this is a pattern for a lot of young sides, that they start the season well and then drop off when the sort of momentum, the sugar hit of the first 2-3 weeks sort of wears off a little bit. Now's going to be the challenge. Because I think now is when you've seen young sides in the past, the last sort of the back end of the season, the second half of the season, is when you see them start to really lose games quite convincingly. I'm a touch worried about Adelaide, just because of the fact they've lost their last 2 really convincingly, and not to sides that are super elite in the competition in GWS and Carlton.
So they're 3 and 5. I think that's where I would have expected these sides to be. Perhaps they're even overperforming at this point in the season. 2 of the past 3 of the losses for the Hawks, they've been completely overrun. So one was against the Swans, and then again against the Dons. They looked all right against a depleted D's. They only lost that one by 10 points, but that is a sign of a young side tiring, and you think they're going to get a little bit more tired as the season goes on. It does start to get a bit colder. Everything's a little bit trickier. And as for the Crows, well, they had that really convincing win, didn't they? That gutsy win down in Ballarat against the Bulldogs. Now, there was a bit of chatter that perhaps they had gotten ahead of themselves after that win. They went into the match against the Giants as favourites, and they just didn't show up, and they've lost the last 2 games by 59 and 48 points. So has the bubble burst? I'm not sure if I'd explain it in that manner, but I think they're just where these 2 young sides should be.
Yeah. I'm a little bit worried for the Crows next few weeks, though.
Who's coming up?
Though they face this weekend Brisbane at Adelaide Oval, so they'll lose that, you'd expect. They host St Kilda the next week, so that you never know at home, I guess. And then they go to Geelong and face the Cats down there. So given where they are at the moment, they could easily be 3 and 8 at the midway point of the year. Now, a few weeks ago we spoke about a good year being 10 wins for them. At 3 and 8, they're probably not going to get to 10 wins.
No.
It's going to be 7 out of their last 11 games. So just slow down in my head for a second and work that one out. 23 rounds and 22 games always gets me. But yeah, I think you're right. They've slowed up a little bit. And the Hawks as well are missing their best. They need their best players to be all out there.
That's true.
So Mitch Lewis hasn't played since round 5, and they haven't won since round 5. Chad Wingard, they really missed on the weekend. I think Chad Wingard plays, they probably win, because he probably had the level of class that would have put them 5 or 6 goals ahead up. by different stages of that game, and Chankle Giath as well.
Yeah.
So they're three. They're
Big
probably
names.
three of the best, probably top 8 players for a rebuilding side. That,
And virtually every ruckman as well.
yeah, exactly. So I think they're both in reasonable shape going forward, but this year we might have seen the best patch of their year.
Sarah, we saw Dusty return
We
on the
did.
weekend. He was awesome. Is his return enough to spark the Tigers into being a genuine premiership contender again?
Well, if you ask Richmond fans, like I did, I was at the G on Saturday, they were pretty pumped, and a lot of them were saying, we're back, baby. Certainly all the supporters were walking a little bit taller with Dusty out there, and so were the players, and we saw that. He has such an energy. They all feed off it, and, we saw with Jack Rewald, he just had to pass it off to Dusty to get that goal to involve him in the game. Look, there's certainly a better side with Dustin Martin. I mean, that's the bleeding obvious right there. And everything he touches turns into a score pretty much. So he had 2 goals of his own, but I think he had his hand in 11 other scoring chains. So he adds that level to Richmond as well. And look, is he going to be the difference? I don't think he's going to lift them to a flag, certainly not. But if they do make the finals and they're in the 8 now, you wouldn't want to come up against a Richmond and a Dustin Martin. They might not be at the level of a Melbourne, a Fremantle and a Brisbane, certainly not. But they might ruffle some feathers in September if they do make the finals. So for me, no, I don't think he's going to lift them to another premiership. But, God, they look a lot better with him in.
Well, he's tangible, but he's also incredibly intangible, and that's what you're saying, isn't it? Like, what you see is what you get, but also the other stuff you have to dig a little bit deeper, and everyone around him lifts. And that's real. And there's reputation factor as well. All of a sudden there's Martin to worry about, and not just Shea Bolton. So they should get to 6-4 now. They play the Hawks and then the Bombers the next 2 weeks. They're in a pretty good position, I think, to be in the mix for a top 6 berth. And then who knows at that point? They might see it internally as their last big crack at it. And with him there, they're clearly a much bigger crack at it. So I think everyone knows, we spoke about this last week, every loss in the year is over, every win, they're not dead yet. It's quite phenomenal, like, the way. But then the Martin factor is significant too. So I think they're right in that group.
They haven't won back-to-back games before last weekend since round 11 and 12 last year, which is quite a long time. We spoke about how they've gone lost win, basically the whole way through this year. Do you know when the last time they won 3 straight games was?
Tell me.
Semi-final, prelim final, grand final in 2020. So they didn't do it at any stage last year, which I find interesting. And they missed Dusty for a lot of that period. The last time we played a full season, they won the flag. So, yeah, maybe. I want to go back to your point that you made. Last year, Cal.
Oh, jeez.
I can't remember what you called it. Did you call it the Dusty window for Richmond?
The Martin moment.
The Martin moment. How long does that extend for? It's because I know it's a year by year proposition. You can't put an indefinite time frame on it. But should they still be targeting a flag at the end of this season? For example, if they fall short, they make the semi-final. They don't make top 4. They make second week of the finals. Should they go after another big name to try and extend the Martin moment?
Yeah, I think they should be looking at that as a real viable possibility. Yeah. So it's the sort of the danger flag thing. For whatever time that Geelong has Patrick Dangerfield playing for them, they owe it to themselves and to him to go, well, we're going to try and win one. And they haven't got one yet, but they keep trying, and they keep getting pretty close. So, and it's very similar now. When you have these great players, you may as well build sides around them and try and work out what you can do. So, yeah, does it mean using your first pick? It didn't mean that from last year, but having used 4 top 30 picks last year, maybe they're comfortable enough with what they got in last year with actually say, well, our top pick, whatever it's going to be this year, and it probably will be somewhere between 12 and 18, you'd say, is that on the table? Could they look at Tim Taranto?
Oof, I love that.
So heading into the bye, they've got the Hawks, the Bombers and the Swans. So you have to give them a chance in all of those games. But Riles, I hear something.
Yes. All right. So our NAB AFL Rising Star nominee for round 8. Now this player is already in possession of arguably the spoil or the tap back of the year, and now he's in possession of a NAB AFL Rising Star nomination. It's Heath Chapman from the Fremantle Dockers. He was awesome on Friday night, 25 disposals, 12 intercepts, 5 marks, 5 score involvements. But in reality, he's probably been awesome all year for the Dockers. And it's another one of these, as Cal mentioned off the top, that we've been speaking about. The first 8 weeks had some really good Rising Star nominees, and it's going to be a difficult decision for the judges at season's end, of which Cal should be one.
It won't be a hard decision for me. I'm not on it. He's been really good, though, hasn't he? And this is the reason that he was right in their mix, and a few other clubs' mix in the draft in 2020, because he could find the footy, and he could always rebound. He's really comfortable with the ball in his hands as a I don't know if I call him a key defender. He's not really, but he can play above his height, he can play below his height. He do a lot of things as a defensive option for them. And he came back into the side on the weekend, having missed a week or two with some protocols, I think. So he's been really good for them from the start, and is a cemented part of that defence. So another good pick up for the Dockers, another first rounder who's doing great things, and joins the Rising Star mix, Heath Chapman.
And one of a plethora of young Dockers simply firing this season for Justin Longmuir. You're listening to AFL Exchange. It's now time for the Exchange.
You took your headphones off because you thought it was going to be loud, but it wasn't loud.
We fixed that up.
Very over the top, Riley. Come on.
It wasn't the cowbell, it was the calf bell.
Was it Leanne from Kansas that didn't like that intro?
I don't know, but we've got some news for Leanne from Kansas.
Yes, stay tuned, Leanne.
Leanne.
Riley, you want to kick us off?
I will. I'm buying, because I think the stocks are low in this.
Okay.
I'm buying Port Adelaide's forward line. So, from an 0-5 start, I think there's a few question marks on how they'd structured up and whether or not there was a future there beyond Todd Marshall. Beyond, Charlie Dixon, who was out injured for much of the season. But Todd Marshall's found some form. He's kicked 8 goals in his last 3 games. He's kicked big bags of 5 in a couple of them and looked really good. He was awesome on the weekend, even though he didn't hit the scoreboard as often as he has throughout the year. Jeremy Finlayson's come back into the side, and he's kicked 8 goals in his last 3 games. Been really good. And Mitch Georgiades probably hasn't had that much luck in front of goal. He kicked 0-4 on the weekend, but we know what he's going to become. Really promising talent for them. They've got Charlie Dixon back this week. I think that forward line's starting to look really good. I think Ken Hinckley's starting to have some really big selection headaches in terms of who he drops to make way for Charlie Dixon when he eventually returns. I think if Charlie Dixon doesn't come back this weekend, it's a question mark on when he actually will, because Port has the sample bye this weekend. And they've got North Melbourne this week.
Do you just bring him back?
Well, I think you have to, because then he doesn't play footy for the week, and you sort of need that continuity. But who do you drop for him? That's the big question.
And there's Fantasia to come back as well into that forward line, of course.
It's probably going to be Georgiades that they drop, which is really unfortunate, because I think he's probably the most promising of that bunch.
Ken's always had a soft spot for Todd Marshall, hasn't he?
Yeah. So North Melbourne, Geelong, Essendon before the bye, they could realistically split that. You go into the bye at 5 and 6 after being 0-5. Who knows what they could achieve this year?
Cal, what are you buying?
I'm buying stocks in Ed Langdon's All-Australian jumper.
Yes.
Nice.
Like it.
Wingmen get overlooked in All-Australian selections like the pesto sandwich at Marvel Stadium Media Box.
Oh, is that your favourite?
No, it gets overlooked. No one touches that.
I'm forced to.
Well, you might get a vegan salad at the G.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
There's a lot of them.
They're not for me.
Anyway. But he has to break that trend, though, not the pesto sandwich trend. He has to break the wingman trend. He's going far too well. And I was a little bit surprised that St Kilda didn't put a little bit more time into him on Sunday, having the week before the Hawks.
Finn McGuinness did the job.
The blueprint.
Managed to shut down his influence a little bit. In saying that, it's very rare to find an athlete as physically capable as running like Finn McGuinness. Like, that guy can run.
That's a good point.
So not everyone has those players who can do that and just stick to the task. But yeah, I think Ed Langdon's been far too dominant in that wing role and been so influential for the D's that he just has to break in and be the All-Australian wingman, and they have to pick him as a wingman. Essendon met with Ed Langdon. It's a sliding doors moment, I would have thought, for him.
Yes. Premiership player now.
I'm buying stocks in Morris Rioli Jr.
Oh,
yeah, he was such a joy to watch on Saturday at the MCG. The stat sheet says it's a 14 disposal game, but the stats don't tell what he did at all. 2 fantastic run-down tackles. I think both of those goals then went to Tom Lynch. And you could just see after Tom Lynch kicked both those goals, the players all went to Morris. They're not going to Tom, so he's providing a lot of energy in that forward line, and it's just nice to have another Rioli back at Richmond and absolutely dominating.
Love it, Skaz. Selling, I think we've got enough sample size now for me to say this. I'm selling the Friday night doubleheader.
Oh, Cal?
I don't love it. And I think what it does...
What about all those people who were able to spend Mother's Day with their family?
Yeah, but, I mean, they weren't doing that in round 3 when it was going on.
How many Friday doubleheaders have there been?
I've had 3 now. And there's
been a couple of different reasons for that.
Yeah, there's one to come in round 15. Why not play one of those games on a Thursday night? So the reason why I'm doing it this week is because Port Bulldogs was an okay game. Freo North was a shocking game. The second game just gets completely overlooked. And I think, yes, the quality of the game they put on then wasn't great, but also, like, I think you find it hard. Well, this is in my personal circumstance. I watched Port Bulldogs live and thought I'll watch on Saturday morning. I'll get up for round so far and watch Freo North. But you just find it so hard to stay engaged in that game when you know that it's an 80-point loss because you can't watch it at the time.
So is that fixturing?
Like, would you get up and watch? Not many people get up and watch a full game that they've got no team association with the next day and feel like it's live.
I also this off topic.
You're talking about a very niche market.
Off topic, but I also find this. I actually agree with you in the sense that I have this exact same argument when people say that the games go for too long. People in the media say the games go for too long because they're forced to watch 9 games a weekend. Supporters who support one club watch one game. I'm sure they don't want their game going for shorter times. Anyway,
and they pay to go, whereas in the media you get paid to go.
Yeah, maybe you've sprung me on my own argument there.
Maybe you should sell this theory of yours that you've just come up with.
No one's buying.
Go on, Kel.
I'm selling West Coast's crisis management handbook. It's going for cheap, I reckon.
You're not getting much.
I think Adam Simpson's comments last week that he was that angry and furious, I think it was, in the statement were incredibly poor, and the players didn't break the law. They didn't break any AFL code protocols. Should they have gone to a nightclub? That's up for debate. But after 2 years over controls over movements,
locations,
lifestyles, locations, within that group there's a Victorian-based player or two that's been there throughout that time whose family's on the East Coast who wouldn't have been able to see their family for 2.5 years. Essentially, apart from a little period off late, I think that the AFL clubs across the country have let the players work things out to a large degree, and Western Australia is just behind. And I feel like that press release last week was probably one of West Coast's worst performances of the year, and that includes Richmond, the loss to Richmond. I think to so publicly paint the players as villains was a miss, a big miss.
No, he plays forever.
He won't be going to the hippie nightclub, I don't think.
No, I agree with you, Cal. That's a very good point. I was really disappointed in that press release.
And COVID's an insidious virus. It can pop up and get you through any number of ways, and I don't think that getting it one way versus another way is should be the subject of vitriol. And yeah, they probably were told not to go, but you know,
I agree. Sarah?
I'm selling the Swans playing the Suns at the SCG. Oh, mama, it is just like clockwork. I'm glad that I was at the MCG and could not watch that game live because I just kept checking my phone quarter time, half time, 3/4 time, and it's the same old story against the Suns when it comes to the Swans at the SCG. The Suns have won 3 of the last 4 matches. And the Swans, well, they're now 5-3, and they're just looking a bit meh. They're a bit back in the pack. And this is a game that they probably would have thought that they would have banked the 4 points, and I think that was entirely the problem.
Well, that's the thing. They did look like that, and they've played like that a couple of times recently.
Slow starts.
As Harry Styles says,
watermelon.
You can't bribe the door on your way to the sky. You need to be actually doing the work to get there. You can't bribe the door on your way to the sky.
I'm not the biggest Harry Styles guy. He's fantastic.
And look, the close win against North and the comeback from Hawthorn, it probably covered up a few cracks, I think, with the Swans. And I think they've just been a little bit exposed. And so John Longmire was saying after the match, we're going to have to work out what is going wrong midweek. And he said, they've had lots of 6-day breaks. Well, if you don't turn up ready to go in the first quarter after you've had all week to prepare for it, I don't know what's going on. But Cal, so the Dogs, they're 3 and 5 after the loss to Port Adelaide. Do they need to make a bold list management move in the off-season?
Well, the window's not closing for the Western Bulldogs.
Yeah.
Even if this year looks like it's heading off the cliff with injuries and unavailabilities, and it's not going well this year for them. But Marcus Bontempelli's 26 and Jack McRae's 27. Aaron Norton is a superstar who's younger than them, and they have a suite of very, very good players across the board and across the field. But the question will be, do the Bulldogs try and sacrifice one of their midfielders, of which that is the area they are most blessed, when they're all available, to fill more of a key forward or key defensive need to really match it with the best sides? And clearly, long-term, their view will be around Jamari Ugle-Hagan and Sam Darcy in key forward post. Sam Darcy a chance to play his first VFL game this weekend after coming back from that navicular injury. Tim English wants to stay and seems likely to sign a 2-year deal to take him through to free agency. So remaining out of contract at the Dogs are Bailey Smith, who is probably leading the Bulldogs best and fairest, to be honest. He's outstanding. Bailey Dale is a free agent, so if he was to go, they'd get a compensation pick. But
would he attract a bid enough to earn him first round?
I would say it'd be pretty close.
Yeah.
He's a pretty good player. All-Australian last year. Josh Dunkley out of contract. Caleb Daniel out of contract, but pretty close to his deal. So do you sacrifice a really good player to get something that you need a little bit more of? And that's, I think, that you'd have to be weighing that question up. Is Dunkley the one? Now, Dunkley's, there's been talks going on. He's been out of contract for a while now. That they've been interested in re-signing him for a long time. Should they be the fit for Rory Lobb if he wants to go to Victoria? Or is he a little bit on the different age demographic than what they need? I think Lobb next to Josh Bruce when he's back, and Norton would then provide this super forward line.
Where are Darcy and Jamara playing?
Well, they're not playing yet.
Next year, you don't think they're in their best side?
You'd want to see more from Jamara, wouldn't you, at this point? I'm a big supporter of his, but he hasn't been able to have that impact yet, and I don't think Darcy will be having an impact at AFL level really much next year either. But that's something I reckon Roy Lobb looks to me like he'd be a fit. It's just a matter of cost, I guess.
A key defender is sort of what they've needed for 2-3 years. And I think they've been exposed by that almost every week this season. They've been exposed by the opposition's key forward. The key defender market, I find, is really strange. I'd go in a different way, and I don't know if he'd actually take this bid himself, but I'd be offering Dan McStay the opportunity to come into that side and be our number one key defender. Now, maybe Dan McStay's, we know he's got interest from Victoria. He's a free agent at the end of the season. And I just think that maybe he's talking to clubs and talking to Brisbane saying, I want to play key forward for the best part of my career. But I think you can almost sell in the vision of doing the opposite, coming down here, playing as a key defender, filling this role for us, knowing that we've got forward targets. Whether or not that comes at the cost of one of their established players already and one of their established midfielders that Cal spoke about, is another question altogether. But there's not many key defenders that circle the market, and I think that's why Melbourne are really smart and probably read the game 3 or 4 years ahead when they brought in Jay Cleaver and Stephen May. I don't think there's the blue chippers available that people might think at the end of every season, like there are with key forwards.
Is this a problem of their own design? We know that Bevo is obsessed with midfielders, of stacking his side every week with midfielders, or have they just got really unlucky when it does come to injury and it's now exposing some deficiencies?
They made the grand final last year and they were 3 goals up midway through the third quarter. So I think the plan has worked. They just, for whatever reason this year, they haven't been in sync at all, and now they're so injury hit that they're battling. And Alex Keith has been a loss at different stages, and they never really played the same way without Josh Bruce there. They obviously went on a pretty magical run to get to the grand final, but it was just a little bit of a slight tweak in style that we saw from them. So, look, as I say, they get their full team together, and Bontempelli fit makes a fair difference as well. But yeah, I think that clubs would be asking the question about them to see if they've got something in return that they might be able to do to make something happen there. One for you, Riley.
Yes.
One of the sides going worse than the Bulldogs is North Melbourne by some fair margin. What do they do in the second half of the season to at least lift the performance to some degree?
What I think they need to do first and foremost is get more out of their senior players. So I think they're 26 and overs. They've got 11 players on their list over 26, which isn't many. I'm not counting Tom Lynch in that because he's no chance of playing, let's be honest. 8 of them played on the weekend. 7 of the 8 had fewer than 16 disposals. There was only 2 that had more than 1 tackle. They're just not getting enough out of the players that should be making them at least competitive. And I think you can point to their rebuild and you can say that there's young players that are going to be good for them. Jason Horne-Francis is going to be a good player. Tara Thomas is going to be a good player. Josh Simpkin, Will Phillips, Tom Powell. They're the future of this football club, obviously. But the guys that they're relying on that should be competitive now just aren't being competitive. And I think at the end of the day, it can't get worse for North Melbourne. Like what they dished up on the weekend, it can't, for the supporters who are watching this, can't get more uninspiring.
3 goals.
Than what they delivered on Friday night. So, I made this point a couple of weeks ago, but why are they playing Todd Goldstein? I know that Tristan Xerri's injured, but when he comes back and they've got the chance of playing Xerri and Coleman Jones, why don't they go in that direction? Why don't they play Tom Powell and Will Phillips and Charlie Comben? I don't know how he didn't get a game on the weekend because he kicked 4 in his last VFL game before the weekend. Nick Larkey goes out of the side. Why aren't they just giving him that opportunity? Because it can't be worse and can't be more uninspiring than what they're currently dishing up. So, second half of the year, in order to lift its performance, it might not lift its performance, but at least it might lift its outlook a little bit. I'd be playing Comben every week. I'd be playing Tom Powell every week. I'd be playing Will Phillips every week. I'd be playing Tristan Xerri and Cal Coleman Jones every week and just seeing what we can get. Maybe Matt McGuinness goes in down back and maybe that opens up the opportunity for him this week with Ben Mackay hurting his knee. At least it might give a bit of hope. You might see a glimpse here or there from a couple of these young players that thinks this is something to build around. Because at the moment, the older players aren't giving them, barring the odd exception. I mean, Lou McDonald's been good for a long time and he was one of their few positives on the weekend. So I'm not saying all of them, but I'm just saying it might give them the view that, yes, we are going in a different direction because the players over 26 at the moment aren't giving them that view.
Yeah, there was a moment in the first term, which I think is pretty emblematic of what you're saying, Riles, and it was a contest in the Dockers forward line between Jai Amos and Aidan Corr. So, the debutant and, the guy that's been brought in on a pretty big contract who's played more than 100 games. And Amos just got rid of him so easily. And it's on players like that to be able to, bring these kids along. It can't just be up to the kids every week who we know are going to be inconsistent. So I agree with you there, Riles. There needs to be so much more from those older players.
And we'll move on, but just one more point I want to make. I think it has been overlooked. They are missing their best player.
Yeah.
Ben Cunnington is their best player, and they rely on him so heavily, and he has missed the entirety of the season. Sarah, who has been the recruit of the year so far?
This is a bit of a fun one, isn't it? So I just want to put some players on the podium. Patrick Lipinski at Collingwood, he's been fantastic.
Lipper.
George Hewitt and Adam Shearer at Carlton, and not even for what they've been doing, and they've been playing sensationally, but what they've been allowing Patrick Cripps to do. I think they have just ticked all the boxes. But I'm going to go with the Dockers.
Oh.
Yeah, we are loving the Dockers this year, and we're finally seeing why Will Brodie was selected with pick 9 back in 2016. Unfortunately, he's not doing it for the club that selected him with that pick, and he is going to come up against the Suns this weekend and maybe just remind them what they are missing. But he's averaging a career-high 27.1 disposals. He's been absolutely instrumental in their wins so far, and for me, the recruit of the year so far, Cal.
All very good ones, all on my list as well. A couple of others who are just off the podium.
Off Broadway.
Jeremy Finlayson has actually been alright for a third-round pick. Now, you talk about value trades. I think he's been pretty solid for that level. Jordan Dawson won Adelaide a game and has been pretty
True.
He did win Adelaide.
Jordan Clark has helped change the way Fremantle play. His speed has been scintillating. Tyson Stengel been amazing, averaging 2 goals a game. But the winner for me, Levi Casbolt. In terms of value for money and value for recruiting, delisted last year from the Blues. He's a rookie pick and has kicked 18 goals in 8 games.
Yep.
He's heading towards a career best total. 34 in 2017 was his best. So he's been terrific. He's marking everything, and they need him to because Ben King's obviously gone down and he's stepped up and he's been terrific.
Just quietly, the other guy they brought in alongside him hasn't been too bad either. Maybe a shoulder. 15 goals in 8 games, so they've combined for 33 between them so far this year. I don't think many could have foreseen this happening at the Suns with Levi Casbolt and Mario Chol being as potent as they have been. So, yeah, they're right up there for me in terms of value for money.
You're listening to AFL Exchange. It's Niall. Now time for things that should happen. All right, I'll kick it off.
Okay.
The AFL just simply has to give the AFLW players some certainty around this season coming up. Riles, it's meant to be starting in what, August?
Late August.
So when would the pre-season start?
Well, they've given them, I think, a 5-week pre-season they've given a heads up on, so mid-July.
I think you'd find that's June.
June.
Yeah, so that is really soon. That is next month, and they don't have a CBA. They still don't know what the season's going to look like. The AFL needs to give these girls some clarity, some certainty. They've got lives. They've got jobs. Like, how much leave...
Some of them live in Ireland, Sarah.
Exactly. How much leave can one take from a job? So it'd just be nice if there was a bit more clarity for those girls. Cal?
Devil's advocate, if the deal's going to be better for them long term,
Totally.
then is it better off waiting to get the better deal?
Yeah, so the CBA hasn't been reached yet, which is the hold-up, right?
Yeah. So
It's a short-term pain for long-term gain argument, isn't it?
I think what they're finding now, though, is because the sign and trade period will be over 2 weeks, and as you mentioned, the pre-season has to start mid-June. Girls that are going to move late in a piece that don't know their futures just yet, if they have to move interstate, they're only going to get 2 weeks to pack up their lives, basically 1 or 2 weeks to make these decisions, tell their work, tell their partners, tell their family, and then move. So that's where it's going to be really sort of complicated, I think.
things that should happen. Chemist Warehouse. Need to get a truckload of flu shots and drive around to every club and jab every player. I've never seen anything like this at AFL level with the number of players dropping with illness or being in doubt. Last week, Adelaide had Rory Laird, Crook. Richmond lost a couple of players pre-game or the day before. Essendon had 5 outs and others were no good. Hawthorn, Chad Wingard, unavailable. Collingwood has been hit with the man flu for a couple of weeks. Chemist Warehouse, there's a gig for you. I got mine last week.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like it. Love that. I'm going to take Sarah's one that she did earlier and take it to the next level. Things that should happen. Sydney should stop playing home games at the SCG. So I don't think it's a Gold Coast problem for the Swans. I think it's a Sydney problem. They've now lost 9 of their last 19 at the SCG.
Because they're not playing that contested footy.
Everyone just thinks that, home ground advantage is like Geelong at Cardinia Park. It's not. They're 10-9 in their last 19 games. When you're an interstate club and you've got the majority of teams coming to you, you should be banking your home wins if you're a side in Sydney's age profile and just how good they are and the quality they possess. They're not. Still don't think a small ground suits the way they want to play footy.
Pretty good. One for you, Riley. Who wins this week, Geelong or St Kilda? Match of the round.
Geelong, for me, really impressed with what they did in Canberra at Manuka Oval against the Giants on the weekend. They just went in there really business-like, got their job done, came home with the 4 points, bank it, move on. I think they've just about got the best big three in the comp now in terms of forwards. Jeremy Cameron, 24 goals from 8 games. Tom Hawkins, 23 goals from 8 games. Tyson Stengel, 16 goals from 8 games. So those three are really potent, lethal partnership up there. I think they win.
Saints haven't beaten the Cats since 2016, but I think they will this weekend. Certainly not disgraced by the D's, although the D's did get a very big jump on them. And of course, the Cats, they're looking good after a compelling win against the Giants, but I don't think the Saints will let the Cats move the ball the way they did against GWS, who just looked really flat. At Marvel, under the roof, I like the Saints, Cal.
Yeah, I'm a bit with you, I think, Sarah. I think the Saints will win that just via being there at home. I'm interested to see how they go, though. Again, I had some moments on Sunday, but I think they will regret how they played, I think, against the D's. I felt like they had a little bit more to give.
Sarah, we saw Saturday night. A favourite on AFL Exchange is the Tim Tam story of Antonio Barté, that when Essendon came back against North Melbourne, bring out the Tim Tam. We saw bring out the Cheezels on Sunday night. What's your go-to chip at the footy?
Oh, well, it has to be a hot chip, and it has to be absolutely swimming in sauce and salt rails. But if I'm out at a suburban footy ground, I can't go past a steamed dimmy in a moat of soy sauce. Cal?
A moat.
I mean, I'm big on the hot chips as well, but if I was going packets of chips, salt and vinegar would be top of the list. Cheezels, I do like Cheezels. I would never think about taking a box of them to the footy. French fries are probably among my other favourite
French fries.
Yeah,
I don't think I've had them since primary school.
they're great.
But
French
you're
fries.
talking like the
the packet of French fries
Yeah.
in the red packet,
yeah,
like the emoji. Not
Yeah,
the
it's quite
emoji.
cute.
Yeah.
not like the McDonald's French fries.
Well, they do as well, but no. Is it Macca's at the G now? I don't even know. I've been to a game as a fan for a little while. Red Rock chips as well.
Yeah, yum.
Yeah, balsamic.
Delicious.
Balsamic, the ones that like make your tongue go numb.
Yeah. And you wake up and the top of your mouth is just cut to shreds. Yeah, something new for me.
Cal, Wednesday, the 1st of June, we're going to have the NAB AFL mid-season rookie draft. 2 of the names we should be across. It's pretty soon.
It's coming pretty quickly. I'm fascinated to see how clubs play the mid-season rookie draft this year. Aren't as many picks. We're up to about 12 available spots or so. I'm sure a couple more will open up in the next 2 or 3 weeks with injuries, maybe even a retirement or 2 to come, a la Josh Caddy. Jai Cully kicked 4 goals in the first half of the Young Guns game on the weekend. Now, he's a Dandenong Stingrays prospect who was overlooked last year. Kicked 4 goals through the midfield. He's 193 centimetres, so a different type, but certainly clubs are looking at him pretty closely as one of the early picks in the mid-season draft. Max Ramsden, who he's been speaking about for a couple of months, I think he's all but locked himself in as a pick in the mid-season draft at some stage. As a ruckman from the San Diego Dragons, took on a time trial of 6 minutes and 4 seconds, so he's quality and he can move. Hugo Hall-Kahan, if he nominates, I think will get a chance. If he nominates, he has to nominate and then he has to get an exemption as well because he didn't nominate for the national draft last year. So that's going to be a bit of a watch this space over the next few days. Nominations have opened on Monday, so that'll be one to keep an eye out for. I like him as a player. He still has to obviously make the call whether he nominates now and goes as a mid-season rookie or waits to the end of the year and where he'll get taken. Fletcher Hart is a key forward from the Murray Bushrangers. Some other names who could get a look in include Lockie Benton, Jacob Bauer, who you've written about, Riley, Jai Menzies, Joel Trudgeon, who was overlooked last year but has been going pretty well at VFL level, Tyler Norton. The other one to just keep a little bit of a look on your radar, I guess, is will a West Coast top-up player get a chance elsewhere?
Oh,
Because
I love this from you, Cal.
it'd be the first time I'm reliably told by our man Swamp, be the first time if he does, or if one of the West Coast top-up players does get a chance that they play for 2 teams. It'd be the first time in 30 years that a player has played for...
Love that.
Florenko was pretty good first half on Saturday night.
Declan Mountford might be a chance as well. You never know. So that'll be a bit of a watch this space. But, yeah, coming pretty quickly, and you'll be able to watch it on afl.com.au.
You're watching. No, you've got
People are watching.
They are watching. Hello, if you are watching the live stream. We're just going to wrap up on AFL Exchange with a bit of feedback. And last week we were talking about the draft night and how you could enhance it all.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Spencer Hawkins says that when draftees get drafted, instead of shaking hands with a new teammate, they do it with the mascot.
I actually really enjoy that. Siggy up there with like Nick Blakey of the past and Ollie Florent.
James, you got a bit of feedback on your
Yeah.
suggestion last week, Rolls. James Tuan says, once you take your 30 seconds to take a shot for goal, unless it's a scoring shot, it's play on. Can you imagine the mayhem of the ball falling short of goal and no one being allowed to mark it?
Actually, don't mind that. That's a good one. Jesse Moyle noticed that Jacob Edwards is now doing social media ads for Racing Victoria.
That's by chance, isn't it? Wasn't he just spotted like in the photo and they didn't know he was Jacob Edwards? I reckon. Will Robertson noticed that Hosk was branching out of Adelaide, so he's gone over to the capital.
Yeah.
In Canberra on the weekend. So that was good to see him.
Gideon Zatcher, I hope I've got that right. I'm at the Swans game and just found out that Siggy's name is actually short for Signacious.
Wow. Hey, have you got some Siggy news for us, Sarah?
Yeah, so it just came to me before we were live, when we were in the green room,
Yeah, that's right.
that I'm pretty sure I've got a photo with Siggy.
In Melbourne or Sydney?
I'm pretty sure, which is a bit crook because I would have been 15, which is too old for photos with mascots. But I reckon it was after the 05 grand final the next day.
That's okay. Anything
Well,
goes.
Geraldine, your mum, who we know is a massive listener of the show,
Hello, Jerry.
if you've got a photo of Sarah with Siggy locked away in the photo albums, please send it through to AFL Exchange.
Michael's done some research, Riley.
This was incredible, to be honest. He felt like it was a longer intro this year. So he crunched the numbers and found out that on average the intro time is 19 seconds this year and that it was 13 seconds this time last year.
So Sarah's been taking a little bit longer
Yeah.
than we did last year.
Ah,
to actually
all right.
first speak. No, we're not saying it's a bad or.
No, I actually quite like it, Sarah.
I
Yeah,
don't know if
sometimes
it's,
I almost forget that I've got to start speaking because I just am bouncing
Like a
around
tune,
a little
isn't
bit.
it?
Yeah.
Leanne update.
Yes, Leanne, you can fill in New York and Pennsylvania.
Fabulous.
Got messages from both of those states.
What about Toronto?
Oh, and Toronto, but that's not really the US, is
No,
it? Like,
it's not.
fair enough.
That's
You're,
No,
good.
no, it's
That was
not.
the joke.
It's not really the US. It's just not the US.
no,
That was the gag.
but you can fill in all of Canada because that counts for all of Canada.
That's true, actually.
Yeah. It's like in the NBA. The Raptors just have.
Sam Patrick said, "Death, taxes, and Cal and that making." I haven't sent you a 6 months joke in the first Road to the Draft episode here.
It's actually good.
That's good. We'll drop that one in the podcast tomorrow. And a lot of comments
A lot. This was a lot of
Really?
comments.
about Robbie Tarrant being soft dropped, and we're glad to see that soft drop, the terminology, continues to spread far and wide across the world. So we coined soft drop 2 years ago, and Robbie Tarrant has become one of the high profile victims of a soft drop. So we hope to see him recover from soft drop soon.
That's all from us on AFL Exchange. Keep clicking back to the AFL Live app for more AFL Exchange and the latest in the world of footy. We'll see you next week on AFL Exchange.